Hi, Deb.
Hi, Michael.
Thanks for joining me today to chat a bit about approaching a budget. Before we get started, maybe you could just introduce yourself to us so we know a bit about how you've been working for the last few years and what you've been up to.
Great. Well, first thing to say is that I didn't start out in life as a numbers person. I started out as a words person. So if you're coming to this struggling with the whole ideas of numbers, I feel it. And I also started with no structures or experience around me. I started by co-founding Forced Entertainment and knew nothing, literally nothing. I'm now executive director of Artsadmin, which is a wonderful privilege and a great organization to work for. Still doing a lot of work with numbers, having mastered also some kind of technical terms and some accountancy speak along the way. So I'm still not primarily a numbers person, but I'm so comfortable around numbers and I love working with them.
When you're writing a budget, sort of why do you need to do it, and how can it be a tool to use beyond just drafting numbers?
So I always reckon it's a good idea to kind of start very, very early on with a budget, thinking about what does the story of this project look like if I try and tell it in numbers, to give real life to the notion of the participatory element of my project, for example. How am I going to structure that? How am I going to think about that? And a lot of that thinking and structuring will come down to what will it cost to hire a space in the town square so that I can engage people? What numbers are going to be underneath realizing that, and the numbers will arise from, for example, talking to your council city centre manager about what's the cost of having a license to put up a stall in the town shopping centre so that you can talk to, people going about their everyday or Saturday business. So once you start to think about how you're going to really put flesh on the bones of your project, numbers will start to really help you to do that. And if, for example, you found out it was like £1,000 to have a stall in your city centre, you'd think, well, okay, so we're going to have to either fundraise for that, or we're going to have to find a way of getting £1,000 just to do that very first point of engagement with the people that we want to reach out to.
Sounds like you're talking a bit about the process of kind of demystifying a project through numbers. There's a lot of unknowns, and that a budget might be a way to kind of start to reveal that and communicate with others about what those unknowns are.
It's a little bit of a step-by-step of a walkthrough of your project, and what it's inviting you to do, because you've got to translate the idea of your project into either a way of generating funding or finding out how you can afford to do it without any funding. Going through your project step by step means that you can figure out what are the kind of basic costs, and also it helps you sort of come up against some logistical things that you might not otherwise get to until a moment where you're thinking, oh, we've got to solve this problem now, but we didn't anticipate this problem. So another example might be that you've got to kind of figure out how many people do I need to have on the stall with me, in fact, because there might be kind of 50 people who are interested in doing this, and it's only me, then that's not going to work. I won't be, and I'll be turning people away, and that will be really bad for the message of the project. So actually what I need to do is to figure out, can I afford to have 2 or 3 people sat with me at that stage? So by kind of doing that walkthrough of what do I need, you are coming back. It's a sort of, it's a sort of circular motion. It's a bit of a dance. You're coming back to, what do I need? What will it cost? If I can't get the money for that, can I do it in a different way?
So a lot of times when you draw up a budget, it actually doesn't, the realization of the project doesn't really look anything like what you originally sort of thought. But how then can that be not something that gives me kind of dread or fear? How do I build a project to be adaptable when I look at the budget?
So it can feel really daunting, but the exercise of row by row thinking about what will the cost of this be, and doing that in a way that is both precise and generous is a way of building in some adaptability to your project. So for example, you need a PA for an element of the project, and you've already researched the cost of the PA. You found the best deal, and the best deal is it's going to cost you 100 quid a day to hire in a PA to do what you want to do. So you know you need this PA for 3 days for the main event, and it's going to cost you £300. That's correct. But if you've only budgeted everything at the exact amount that it's going to cost you, you have no room for maneuver, no room to adapt and change as the project evolves. And in that example, you discover that really you need the PA for 4 days, and then you're not going to be able to get it back to them until the afternoon of the 5th day because of the logistics. So actually, what you might have wanted to do at that point is, instead of putting £300 in your budget, you might want to add another 100 quid just in case you need extra time for the PA, for its use or for its kind of return. So building in as much as you can. And of course, this will give you, in the first instance, a budget where you think, oh, that's way more than I thought it was going to cost. And then you can kind of begin to look at the elements of the budget that are really important, the bits of the project that are really important, and you can begin to kind of mold and change according to the figures. So the first time you do it, it's an exercise. It's an exercise in understanding all the things that your project needs in more detail. And then it's an exercise in understanding what that could cost. And then there's the task of kind of really honing it down. So all the time you're sort of, you know, again, it's that dance, it's that back and forth with your budget helping you to make the project feasible, achievable, and really robustly planned for.
There's kind of multiple ways of approaching this. One is sort of through this like what could go wrong mentality, and the other is a little more like kind of creatively imagining all the different ways this project could go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's also, we started off talking about communication. So if what you're doing is delivering something with a group of people, it's really helpful to be able to sort of to understand that collective vision for either you or a colleague to go away and plot that vision in numbers, and then come back to the sort of wider group and say, okay, so that's what we took from that discussion about what the project would look like. This is what it looked like in terms of numbers, and these are the challenges in the numbers, but also maybe some of the things that we could do that we hadn't thought about doing, which are equally creative and resourceful. Be as detailed as you can and separate things into unit costs and quantities, because that's a way of going, well, if I need, you know, I mean, you wouldn't need 3 PAs for a project, but you might do. So what's the unit cost of the PA per day? And then what is the number of days that you're going to need that number of PAs for? So you've got, let's say, 3 PAs over 3 days. You've got quantity, which is 9, you've got your unit cost, and then you can flex the budget around the changes that you need to make. If you've set it out in, let's say you're using an Excel spreadsheet, you've got a column for unit cost, you've got a column for quantity, and you've got your total, which is literally that cell times that cell into that cell. If you feel you need to increase the unit cost, if you do that in that cell, your total cost is going to change, and you don't have to change every single cell. And that also helps with accuracy as well.
What I think I hear you saying is put a generous number in now, and
yeah,
just as the project goes along.
Yeah, and be as detailed as you can, because the more detail you have at this stage, the more you will avoid the hidden problems, which you don't want to kind of take out of your contingency further down the line. You really start with the principle that you just don't want to touch that contingency. Really start with that principle. Don't think in the back of your mind, well, we could get that out of the contingency. Common practice, good advice is don't do anything with less than a 5% contingency of your project costs in case something goes wrong. Like that's where everyone starts with a contingency, that it's that buffer that you have in case something costs more than you think it's going to cost. What I've also found over the years is that your contingency is something which can help you if you do not meet all of your fundraising targets and the project needs to go ahead by a certain date. So you've also got some buffer around not meeting the income targets. That could be income on the day through, let's say, box office. It could be that a funder didn't come through. It could be that you were expecting some stuff through crowdfunding that also didn't come through. But your contingency allows you to continue with the project at the cost levels that you're expecting, but you've absorbed that drop in income through your contingency, which is why you shouldn't spend it in advance. Never spend it in advance. Mentally, just don't do that, because then you take away your buffer against the sort of that kind of last day income coming through.
What I'm taking away from our conversation is that approaching a budget doesn't need to be something that you kind of talk yourself into doing and sit down and have to be very serious about, but that actually you can approach it through a sense of enjoyment, that you can have energy with it, and that it can really be a creative exercise of getting to sort of learn and love the project that you're working on more.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it is definitely a creative exercise. It's that point where you're kind of looking at all the pieces. How do they fit together? How do you give more emphasis to one part than another? You know, you really kind of, it's a brand new exciting toolkit that you're opening up. It's like new stationery. It's got that kind of feel and smell to it. It's like, whoa, here comes the project, and I'm going to play with it on my computer, on Excel, and I'm going to see how it all works and bring a sense of fun to it. It won't always be fun, of course, but at the outset, it's a blank sheet of paper, and you can really enjoy those first marks on the blank sheet of paper.